بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Today's class, we're going to read from the first volume of a magnificent work, Al-Jami' li Ahkam al-Nisa, the comprehensive, exhaustive work including rulings of women. The comprehensive book, Al-Jami', the book that is comprehensive and exhaustive, li Ahkam al-Nisa, for rulings of women, things that pertain to our sisters in al-Islam, of halal and haram, everything from wudu and ghusl, tayammum, menstruation, up until salah, adhan, iqamah, women standing in rows. Can women pray in congregation? Is there an imamah? Is there a female imam in the salah? A woman getting married, does a woman have to serve her husband? Do you have to cook for your husband? Do you have to clean for your husband? Do you have to be a housewife in Islam? Is that obligatory or just cultural? A woman getting married, the mahar, the dowry, the marital gift, etc., bridal gift, divorce, the types of divorce, inheritance, what happens if a woman becomes a widow? How long does she have to mourn for her husband? Is she allowed to go outside? Can you wear deodorant if you're mourning? Can you wash up with bath gel? Can you smell good at all? Can you put on perfume? We have to smell and stink for 4 months and 10 days if you're a widow. Everything that pertains to or is specific to the rulings, the halal and the haram, the do's and the don'ts for women, is a tremendous book written by a scholar of Egypt, Sheikh Mustafa Al-Adawi. This book is written many years ago and is an excellent work. An excellent work. It's 5 large volumes written by, as we said, the author, Sheikh Mustafa Al-Adawi, Hafidhullah, who is from the students and pupils of Sheikh Muqbil rahimahullah ta'ala and others. What's important is we're reading from the first volume, and the chapter that we want to discuss is something that we spoke about before in a question on Mufti Q&A. And it's a very big argument and discussion, and it's a huge, widespread problem globally. And it's a major controversial issue that has has caused a great deal of harm. And through many people's misunderstanding, misinterpretation, malpractice of it, it has placed a black eye on the stain on the reputation of Islam and Muslims. And that is no other issue than the issue of khitanun nisa, female circumcision. Female circumcision. That's what we'll say as Muslims, as people practicing Quran and Sunnah. Obviously, there's a world out there that bans this use or the use of this term or this terminology, the usage of this term, female circumcision. And they say that it's not female circumcision, rather it's FGM, female genital mutilation, or FGC, female genital cutting. And as a FYI, as we say, there was a time in which non-Muslims or even Muslims, but people that were against the practice as a whole, it was a time in which they actually used the word or the term circumcision, which proved or which states a type of equivalence to male circumcision. And there isn't a worldwide crusade against male circumcision, especially against followers of different religions, whether it be Jews or Muslims. It's well known that Jews do circumcision for their male children, and Muslims do it, all right? And there may be some other people, other religions, other faiths, or even Christians or people that are born and birth is given to them in a Jewish hospital or a place in which they see that the circumcision for boy children is clean and hygienic, all right? So there was a time in which they used the term female circumcision and not mutilation. And obviously there's a world of a difference between the two terms. Circumcising someone, no one gets the EBGBs as much as someone saying mutilating one's genitalia, one's external genitalia. It's a word of a difference. In subhanallah, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Inna min al-bayani la sihran." He says, from words and from speech, there's sorcery, magic, and how a wording, a sentence can change the concept and the perception 101%. As we said, this person is a terrorist, and this person is a freedom fighter. It's like night and day. He's a terrorist. He kills innocent women and children, non-combatants. He doesn't fight conventional warfare. He's a freedom fighter, fighting for the freedom of his country. Or they may say a freedom fighter versus an insurgent. Insurgency. A person is an insurgent. What does that mean, an insurgent? This is my country. You've come to take over and to dictate and to say what government and form of government is needed in my country. You need democracy because we've said so. I fight back, I resist, and then I'm an insurgent or a terrorist versus a guerrilla fighter. A guerrilla versus a terrorist versus a freedom fighter versus an insurgent, etc., right? These terms are very old, and obviously they have a huge effect on how you actually look at the thing just by the words that are mentioned. So the point is, historically, if you do your research, you'll see is that there was a time in which the opponents of female circumcision or cutting anything from a woman's external genitalia, they used the word circumcision, and they didn't ever use the word mutilation. However, there was a time, if I'm not mistaken, maybe in the 70s, in which certain people and certain groups and coalitions in the African mainland continent or the African continent, they decided that we're not going to use the word circumcision at all. And it's everything or anything and everything that is cut or trimmed or taken from a woman's external genitalia is mutilation. Period. End of sentence. Close the book. All right? And obviously a person will accept the word circumcised but not accept mutilation. Even though there are people as well who argue over male circumcision. And there are many opponents of male circumcision. There are those who say that male circumcision is harmful. And the excess skin, it has a benefit, and there's something, a reason behind it, etc., etc. All right? So this is a very, very deep issue, very big issue. There are people for it, people against it. There are people that say that it's not absolutely good, nor is it absolutely bad. There's the detail or details. And as I said before, this is one of the many, it's not the only one, many, many different specimens of the clash between faith versus culture, or legislation versus culture, traditional practice versus the actual hadith and the actual Islamic ruling. All right, is this from the deen? Is this Islam, or is it what some Muslims do? Is it based off of something authentic, or is it a cultural practice? Also, we have the concept of feminism, feminist movement, the surge of the LGBTQ community today, gender equality, people who spend millions of dollars a year, make movies, books, novels, cartoons, and who staunchly fight politically to prove that a woman is absolutely equal to a man in every single meaning of the word equal. There's no difference between a man and a woman. They are the same. Everything a man can do, a woman can do. Everything a woman can do, a man can do and should do. And there's no such thing as role or gender role. No, there's absolute equality. This is a part of it as well. Also, I would say historically, the sexual revolution is a part of this issue as well. And the embracing of sexuality in general, let alone a woman's sexuality. And if you read your books, you'll find in history, it's a historical fact, not all the time in every place, but oftentimes in many places, a woman's sexuality was something which was extremely mysterious. And it was unknown. It was something which was mysterious and mystical. And it was something that was oftentimes ignored and abandoned. And many people lived in a state of denial. There's no such thing as a woman's sexuality. There's no such thing as a woman's sexual pleasure. There's no need for it. A woman is to make children. She's a baby factory, and that's it. Lie upon your back or your belly, and that's it. You have my child. That's it. Are you sexually pleased and aroused? It doesn't matter. because you can't become pleased. There is no such thing as a woman reaching pleasure. A man is the only one who reaches pleasure. This is a fact. This is a fact. And there are many misunderstandings with regards to sexuality and with regards to a woman's sexuality and the parts of her body. And obviously, as the time moved on and the people progressed or regressed, either of the two, advanced research, also the concept of pornography, okay, and the sexual liberation, and pornography being something open and public, and a woman in a movie back in the days had on a dress and a skirt in the 30s and the 40s and the 20s, and for a woman to have on short shorts or tight shorts in a movie in the 50s was considered to be provocative. Marilyn Monroe. And now you look at the movies and the videos today, and a woman is basically naked, if not fully naked in a movie or a video, and she's singing and dancing. It wasn't like that before. How many women today wear pants, wear trousers, wear tights and leggings, things like this? It wasn't like that before. Women had to wear a dress. She could not leave the house if she wasn't wearing a dress or a skirt. She was considered to be a this and a that if she had on pants. These things have changed, and the people have become more public, more boisterous, more outward, more open about sexuality, pornography, equality, LGBTQ, and the list goes on. And many people have left Islam and apostated from Islam because of these cultural practices and these cultural norms that they were taught or forced, things were forced upon them in their country or their countries that they were taught was Islam, but it wasn't Islam. And now they blame Islam for it. I was abused, molested, raped, or this woman was killed by an honor killing, so I don't want to be a Muslim no more because Islam is oppressive to women, or they mutilated my genitals. I can't have children. I have recurring infections. I have chronic pain and difficulty. I can't enjoy intercourse with my husband because it was done to me in Uganda or in Afghanistan or in Yemen. So therefore, I don't want to be a Muslim no more. This is a reality. And I think and I feel that all of these things must be taken into account when we talk about this fiqh ruling in al-Islam. It has to be taken into account because they're all connected. And as we always say, from one thing you learn 10,000 other things. It's all connected, all right? Also, the concept of the liberation of many women that have come from other countries, they have migrated to America, or women that are second-generation Muslims, whether they're from Yemen or Egypt or Mali or the Gold Coast, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, all right, Burkina Faso, all right, Muslims that came from different countries and they were raised in America, or second generation, third generation, and they oftentimes have problems and complaints with their husbands, and they get divorced, and they want a divorce. And me being an imam and counseling people and helping people out in their marriages and the problems that come with that, I would say this is one of the most common problems. It's not the only problem, but it is definitely in the top 3, I would say, from my experiences, which are many. In the top 3, top 5 of complaints of women who want to get divorced and women who complain about their husbands is that my husband does not please me sexually. My husband does not please me sexually. This is one of the top complaints. My husband does not give me sex. My husband doesn't please me. He doesn't think that I need sex. He doesn't spend any time with me in the bed. Or they say, and the truth is said, he doesn't last long enough. My husband has ED. He has erectional dysfunction, whatever they call it. He can't get an erection, or he can't keep an erection. My husband watches pornography. My husband masturbates. My husband is a chronic masturbator. My husband can't have sex with me. He's not attracted to me. He can't last for 5 minutes. He can't last for 10 minutes. Wallahi al-azim. Many women have said this, and they complain about these things. My husband, he doesn't want to perform certain sexual acts on me, such as oral sex. He thinks it's dirty and disgusting, and he can't please me, and that's the only way that I can reach orgasm is through clitoral stimulation. I can't just have traditional missionary sex. I need this and I need that. This is a complaint that many women have. And oftentimes it's based off of this. A woman was mutilated or circumcised, or a man, the brother who comes from this part of Afghanistan or India or Pakistan or this part of Africa or wherever, or Saudi Arabia, wherever he comes from, he was taught and he was raised that a woman doesn't have any sexual pleasure. A woman does not need any sexual pleasure. And if a woman needs to be pleased sexually, then she's a whore. She's a harlot. She's a scarlet woman. She's an unchaste and she's an unclean woman. She doesn't need to reach an orgasm. If she has one orgasm, she doesn't need 2 or 3 or 4. There's no such thing as being orgasmic. There's no such thing as this. That's filthy. That's disgusting. Oral sex is haram. It's disgusting. It's animalistic. It's bestial. So on and so forth. This is what he's been taught. Or, at best, he's never been educated about the anatomy of a woman and about her external genital or genitalia. And he doesn't know that there's a such thing as a clitoris. He doesn't know that there's a such thing as labia, external, internal. He doesn't know these things. Vulva and this part, he doesn't know. So he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to please her. And this, trust me, this is not an exaggeration. This is a reality. This is a reality. Many men, they don't know that women are different. And that there are certain women that need clitoral stimulation to become stimulated and to reach orgasm and to have pleasure in sex. They don't know. And they think that just penetration and that's it. Why isn't my wife pleased? Why is she complaining? I give her sex all of the time. I make love with her. What's the problem? They don't have the proper necessary education. And we all know that if a woman is pleased Islamically and she's being taken care of and she's pleased sexually, so on and so forth, then inshallah, hopefully there are other things that she'll be pleased in, and that the household, the children, the man's life, and the things will be easier and better. As they say, happy wife means happy life. And it doesn't mean that a woman is not going to complain about other things, nor does it mean that a woman is going to be happy just because she's sexually pleased. It doesn't mean that necessarily, but it does add to it, there's no doubt. It does help the situation, and the lack of happiness or pleasure, it does lead to other problems and other types of misery and complaints. There's no doubt about that. Sexual frustration, as they say, a sexual healing, this is a reality of life. And it can lead to frustration, it can lead to arguments, to fighting. There's no doubt about that. But the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us about the people of the fire of hell, and most of them will be women, and how they will be ungrateful and disrespectful to their husbands. And if a husband did good for his wife his whole life, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and she saw a bad thing about him, a mistake, a shortcoming, she immediately forgets it and rejects it and denies it. She says, "Ma ra'aytu minka khayran qat." I never saw any good from you, period. You've never done anything for me. You've never helped me out. You never do this. You never do that. This is the reality. However, it doesn't mean that there aren't factors that lead to marital discord and lead to divorce and a woman being displeased. And many of those reasons are things that I've just explained. So we have the modern day American Muslim, whether you're black or white or Hispanic, your parents come from Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic, or whether you're, as they say, Caucasian, your parents have been in America for hundreds of years, came from Europe or whatever, or whether you're a black Muslim. And me, myself, personally, I don't prefer to use the term African American. I don't consider it to be a valid term. Rather, I consider it to be a derogatory term and a further means of racial classification and racial inequality. Your parents have been in America, your mother is American, grandmother's American, great-grandmother, whether you're descendants of slaves or not. Your parents came to America, your forefathers came to America as explorers or warriors, or whether they came as slaves. Your great-grandmother was Native American, quote-unquote, Indian, as they say. She's a Delaware Indian, Sioux Indian, Cree, whatever the case is, right? Your great-grandfather or your grandfather was Caucasian, slave master who had concubinage with one of his slaves, all right? Whatever the case is, or if you take the argument and you say that black Americans are indigenous and that the original Native Americans, the people that were indigenous in this country, were black, and that they weren't all quote-unquote Indian, and that's a hoax, and that's a lie. There are no slave ships. There's no scientific documented evidence of slaves coming in droves of millions from the Gold Coast. The Atlantic Passage is a lie, etc. Whatever your theory is, because there are many theories about black Americans. There are many theories. The point is that there's no doubt My parents have been in this country for 300 years, 400 years, some of them, maybe longer than that. And I'm classified as an African American. What African languages do I speak? Zero. What cultural references do I have to African culture? Zero. The foods that I eat on a daily basis, spaghetti, lasagna, baked ziti, ravioli, eggplant parmesan. I had eggs and bacon and fried mushrooms for breakfast. I had a hero or a sub or a hoagie, a cheesesteak for lunch. I had ribeye steak and potatoes all gratin for dinner. And I had strawberry cheesecake or apple crumb, or pie a la mode for dessert, apple pie and vanilla bean ice cream. Which of those meals is African? The snacks, the drinks, the clothes, everything that I do in my life, nothing is based off of Africa. If you took me to Africa, north, south, east, central, I wouldn't know anything. I wouldn't know where to go. I wouldn't know what to speak. Rather, the Africans themselves who come to Brooklyn and Bronx, they look down upon me. They say, you're a son of a cotton picker, and you're a descendant of a slave, and you're this, and you're unequal, and you're a savage, and you're this, and you're this. We're true Africans. What connection do I have to Africa except for the fact that my skin is dark, my nose is broad, my hair is nappy, I have a strong muscular physique, etc., whatever the case, whatever stereotype there is, that's it. Or it may not even, that might not even be the case. My skin is light. I'm light-skinned. I'm fair-skinned. I'm lighter than some people who come from other countries that aren't Africans. My hair is fine or curly. I don't have a broad nose. Or I'm weak and I'm frail. I don't have the typical, stereotypical African physique. Then what? But yet and still, I'm called and I'm classified African American. Now, we don't have time, and that's not the topic of our discussion, but it is important. My humble opinion, and this is only my opinion, I'm not saying this is the Quran and the Sunnah and the speech of the ulama, is my opinion, is that I feel that that term is inaccurate and incorrect. And I feel that there are reasons why that term is used. A person has been in America longer than this white person, and he isn't called Irish American or Italian American or German American or Polish American or French American or Latvian American. They're not called Scandinavian American. They're not called Vikings. They're called white Americans. And I've been here longer than he or she has been here. And my parents and forefathers may have suffered more, may have been oppressed more, may have done more work in this country than his parents did. And he's called white and I'm called African American. That's an extremely deep concept in itself. You're from Africa, you're half African, you're not American. This person who's second generation Polish, third generation German, Irish, they're called white Americans. Something seriously wrong with that terminology, and Allah knows best. That's my opinion. So the point is that there are indigenous Muslims that are born and raised here who accepted Islam, reverted, or second generation Muslim, third generation Muslim. My father was a Muslim. My mother accepted Islam. When I'm in the airport overseas, they say, where you really from? I say, I'm really from America. They say, no, where you really from? You're black. You can't be American. Or you have an Arabic name, Muhammad Hamid. Or Saudi say Muhammad Humaid. That's how they pronounce it. You can't be all American. You speak Arabic. You wear thobe. You're religious. You can't be American. Sister, she asked me in the airport. We were traveling to Canada, I believe. Or we were traveling to Buffalo, excuse me. It's an African sister. She says, you're a Muslim? She walks up to me, I have on a thobe, a kufi. She says, you're Muslim, huh? Subhanallah. So the point is that Muslims that are from America, and then we have Muslims who have migrated from other countries, from the sub-Indian continent, Bangladesh, come from Dhaka, or Islamabad, or Karachi, Lahore, Mongolia. People come from New Delhi, Delhi, Bombay, Azim Abad, Hyderabad, all right, Kerala, different parts of India, right, Sri Lanka, Ceylon, what it used to be, right? People who come from the parts of Africa, as we've mentioned, South, the Congo, Central Africa, Nigeria, Chad, North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, right? Sudan, North and South, let alone West Africa, all right? Muslims who come from different countries and how they practice Islam and how they look at Islam. And the parents versus the children. The child goes to Lehman College, or this community college, or this city college, or this state college, or this university. They have people in their class from all different races and ethnicities. But their parents are West African in mind, body, and spirit. Their parents are Arabs from Yemen, Hashidi tribe, Dhamar, in this place and that place, all right? And they're Arab, as they say, huh? Kuh. They take firm, strong pride in their Arabic heritage and lineage. But their son or their daughter, she's American. She eats American foods. She watches American movies. She listens to American music. Yes, we're going to keep it real. As the brother said, in a sit down, you don't ask the sister, do you listen to music or not? But you ask her, what's your favorite Drake song? That's the way of determining whether a sister listens to music or not. Whether she stutters and says, I like this or that, or she says, astaghfirullah a'udhu billah. This is a reality. She's going to college. Her friends, many of them are non-Muslim. The Muslim friends that she do have, they're from all over the world. People that her parents from Yemen would never, ever mingle with. They would not be caught dead with this black African whose skin is black and nose is wide and lips are fat and has naughty. They wouldn't be caught dead with this African person, talking to them, let alone befriending them. That's her best friend in college, African sister. This person from Lebanon, from this country, etc. It's a cultural melting pot. But their parents aren't like that. Their parents are still stuck on the old ways from back home. You can't have anyone who's a friend who's not from Nigeria. Only Nigerians. Nigerians are the best people in the world. No one else. But that's not the Nigerian sister in the college. Her friends are white, black, blue, purple, and pink. So this is a reality now. So when we have this cultural melting pot, and then we have the Islamic melting pot. This person comes from a Shafi'i country. This person comes from a Hanbali country. This person comes from a Zahiri country. This person learns about Dawah Salafiyah, as they say. This person is from Jamaat Tabligh. My parents were Sufis. My parents were this, my parents were that, etc. So now we have a big pot of gumbo, as they say, jambalaya. All types of ingredients now. And then we live in America. We're citizens of America. We're under the protection of America, the benefit of America. We go to school. My parents have a big fat house. They drive big fat cars. Everyone's comfortable. We save thousands of dollars. We send money back home. Everyone's living the American dream. And then we have his terrorist attack. And that terrorist attack. And the Muslims do this and the Muslims say that. And this person gets on TV and says this is what Islam is. And another person says the niqab is not from the deen. And we have a huge problem now. Now we have a need and a necessity to be apologetic. No, that's not true. There's no such thing as jihad in the Quran. Jihad is jihad al-nafs, self-defense. No, while polygamy was permissible at a certain time, it's no longer permissible. You know, it was a need for a man to have more than one wife because people died young, and a man had to go out and hunt and bring back the deer to the village, and he needed women to cook the meat and preserve it and turn it into jerky, and that's how the people had to survive. But there's no such thing as polygyny now. A man only needs one wife. He can barely pay for the bills and the expenses. So what we have today. And then people will say that you don't have to grow a beard, you don't have to have a hijab. No, that's not true. Islam means peace. And we have the serious progressive movement and the apologetic movement. Muslims in Congress, Muslims who are politicians, Muslims who stand up for the rights of other Muslims and Middle Eastern people, etc., care, and the list goes on. So the problem is that we have a major difficulty now. We have these different groups. We have these different terrorist attacks, quote unquote. We have the kids going to college, the parents who drive these large SUVs and have these big homes and have thousands and thousands of dollars from interest. We have to tone it down and water it down. And we have to apologize to these non-Muslims who have kept us safe and given us this money and given us this fortune. And we have to allow our religion to be acceptable to them and to be something that isn't scary and terrifying to them. let alone the Muslims who are no longer Muslims. They've apostated, they've written books and done interviews on why I used to be a Muslim. I'm from Somalia, and I'm now an infidel and an apostate. And from those issues that have become controversial is the issue of female circumcision. Islam is not the truth because of female circumcision. Don't be a Muslim because of female circumcision. You have to be a modern progressive Muslim because of female circumcision. A sister in America, she wants to wear the hijab, but she says, I'll never wear the hijab, I'll never cover my face because of what they did to me in my country. Or because the imams of the masjids and the leaders of the masjids, they're all chauvinistic pigs. They're chauvinist pigs, all of them. They just want to dominate women. They mutilated this woman. My child shall not be mutilated and circumcised. This is the problem, and this is what we face in the modern world today. In Canada, in the UK, in the United States, in Australia, right? We have a black Muslim, we have a Lebanese Muslim, we have a Puerto Rican Muslim. The black Muslim says this is what Islam is, this is how you have to dress, this is what you have to do, this is haram to eat this, haram to go here, haram to have college, haram, haram, haram. The Lebanese Muslim says everything's halal. There's no problem. Do what you like. Islam is in your heart, brother. You don't have to wear hijab. You can go where you want to go. You can take interest. You can take loans. Nothing's haram, brother. We live in the United States. And the Muslim from Puerto Rico, he may say, well, this is clearly haram and this is clearly halal. We live in America, so we can't implement this, but we can implement that. And the list goes on of any scenario that you want to make up. This is a major, major issue now. So this is the atmosphere of polygamy and polygyny. This is the atmosphere of jihad. This is the atmosphere of voting. This is the atmosphere of free mixing. This is the atmosphere of interest. This is the atmosphere of the beard, of the niqab. This is the atmosphere of female circumcision. This is the atmosphere of al-bara' wal-wala, hating and loving. Can the kuffar be your friends? Can you have a friend who's a non-Muslim? Is it permissible for you to be on a soccer team or the cricket team? Can you play football with non-Muslims? Can they be your friends? Can you hang out with them at the job? Can a Muslim be a fireman, a firefighter? Can you join the army? Can you pledge allegiance and loyalty to this country and what it stands for? Can a masjid have the Star-Spangled Banner, the American flag, on its lawn? What is our position on these things? All of these things have to be taken into consideration when we talk about what is and what isn't lawful. And many people, they talk about these things and they don't give the necessary background and they don't put it in the necessary atmosphere, which I've just mentioned. Okay, the different wars, the different things that happen in the world, the political movements, the religious movements, the reformist movements, all of these things have a huge effect on all of these fiqh issues. Can a woman cover her face or not? Can a woman be an imam of a masjid or not? Can a non-Muslim enter the masjid? Is there such thing as interfaith? Why do the Muslims in the inner urban city, we never hear them talking about interfaith? There's no such thing as interfaith. But you go to the suburban Muslim communities, and interfaith is like brown on rice. Every major masjid in a suburban community, there's an interfaith movement. Non-Muslims coming to the masjid, pastors coming to the masjid, Jesuit priests coming to the masjid, Father Flan comes to the masjid. There's something wrong. The Muslims who live in the suburbs, in the rural areas, Islam means peace. And there's no such thing as jihad. Jihad was a thing in the past. We're over that. We've progressed that. There's no such thing as slavery in Islam. No one can be a concubine, a sex slave. That doesn't exist. But you go to an inner city masjid, urban city masjid, in which the majority of the inhabitants of the masjid are indigenous Muslims. And the Muslims that do come to the congregation that come from other countries are cab drivers and not doctors and lawyers and major bigwigs. They say jihad is from Islam. Islam doesn't mean peace. Islam means submission. And this is from the deen and that's from the deen. There's a huge contradiction. And there are reasons why. And those reasons are what we have just mentioned, of history and of atmosphere. So we cannot talk about female circumcision or anything else in the deen unless we discuss all of these things. You have to understand the atmosphere and the background behind all of these things. Tayyib, khairan inshaAllah. So after that very long introduction, the author of the book, he says in the chapter on page 17, ختان النساء. قال الإمام البخاري رحمه الله حديث رقم، وذكر رقم الحديث: حدثنا أحمد بن يونس قال حدثنا إبراهيم بن سعد قال حدثنا ابن شهاب عن سعيد بن المسيب عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: الفطرة خمس: الختان والاستحداد وقص الشارب وتقليم الأظفار ونتف الآباط. صحيح، وأخرجه مسلم وأبو داود والنسائي وابن ماجه. The author, he says in the chapter heading, Khitan al-Nisa, he says female circumcision. Female circumcision. And then he quotes Imam al-Bukhari, and he mentions the number of the hadith, hadith number 5,891. Imam al-Bukhari, he says, Ahmad ibn Yunus has narrated to us from Ibrahim ibn Sa'd, from Ibn Shihab, from Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who said, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, the fitrah entails 5 things. The first is al-khitan, circumcision. The second is wal-istihdad, shaving one's armpits or shaving one's pubic area. وَقَصُّ الشَّارِب, trimming the mustache. وَتَقْلِيمُ الْأَظْفَارِ, trimming one's fingernails and toenails. وَنَتْفُ الْآبَاطِ, and plucking one's underarm hairs. The hadith says, once more, Imam al-Bukhari, he narrates from Ahmad ibn Yunus, who narrates from Ibrahim ibn Sa'd, who narrates from Ibn Shihab, who narrates from Ibn Musayyib, who narrates from Abu Hurairah, who narrates from Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who says, the fitrah entails 5 things. The first, al-khitan, circumcision. The second, al-istihdad, says shaving one's pubic hair. 3, qassu al-sharib, trimming the mustache. 4, taqlim al-adfar, clipping one's fingernails and toenails. Number 5, natfu al-abat, and plucking the hairs of the armpits. The author, he says, this hadith is authentic, and it has also been collected by Imam Muslim, Imam Abu Dawood, Imam al-Nasa'i, and Imam Ibn Majah. So, first and foremost, the author, in the footnotes, he discusses, he says, ta'rif al-khitan. He says the definition of the word khitan, which is the Arabic equivalent of circumcision, or some people may say mutilation. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to see in Arabic, does this word or does this term necessitate mutilation? Even though that's relative, because someone could say anything is mutilating something, and another person say it's not mutilation, it's circumcision. I haven't mutilated anything. Just like we have other relative terms, war crimes, and one country or one movement, or before or after the Geneva Convention, they say this is a war crime. You've killed this prisoner of war, it's a war crime. Or you killed these civilians, it's a war crime, a crime of war, or it's genocide. And others before the Geneva Convention, or those whom the Geneva Convention has not reached, as he said, this isn't Geneva, they say it's not a war crime. He's a prisoner of war, he's been defeated, he tried and attempted to kill us, so therefore we have the option of freeing him, we have the option of ransoming him, and we have the option of executing him. Period. It's not a crime. Or these people, they're traitors, or they were combatants, and they are to be put to death. It's not a crime. It's not execution. It's not genocide. Things are relative. Some say tomato, some say tomato. So what does the word khitan mean in the language of the Arabs? The author, he says in the footnotes, قال صاحب اللسان متن ختن الغلام والجارية يختنهما ويختنهما ختنا والاسم الختان والختان وهو مختون فقيل الختن للرجال والخفض للنساء والختين المختون الذكر والأنثى في ذلك سواء والختانة صناعة الخاتن والختن فعل الخاتن الغلام والختان ذلك الأمر كله وعلاجه والختان موضع الختن من الذكر وموضع القطع من نواة الجارية. قال أبو منصور هو موضع القطع من الذكر والأنثى ومنه الحديث المروي إذا التقى الختانان فقد وجب الغسل وهما موضع القطع من ذكر الغلام وفرج الجارية ويقال لقطعهما الإعذار والخفط ومعنى التقائهما غيوب الحشفة في فرج المرأة حتى يسير ختانه بحذاء ختانها وذلك أن مدخل الذكر من المرأة سافل من ختانها لأن ختانها مستعل وليس معناه أن يماس ختانه ختانها وهكذا قال الشافعي في كتابه. He says here, the lexicographers of Islam, those who wrote the dictionaries, the different ma'ajim, the dictionaries and the lexicons of Islam, the scholars of the language, they say that these three letters, the root word kha, ta, nun, khatana, he says it pertains to al-ghulam, a boy, and jariya, a girl. And he mentions the different versions of this verb, past tense, present tense, the masdar, verbal noun, etc., al-khitan, al-khitana. And once a person receives khitan, in the Arabic language is called makhtum. Okay? And some say that the word khitan is specific to men, and khaft is specific to women. طيب. And others, they say rather it's synonymous. Khitan is used for males and females, for a penis and for a vagina. It's the same. Boy and girl, both sexes, male and female. It says here that doing the khitan is the place. He says, موضع الختان من الذكر وموضع القطع من نواة الجارية. The word khitan can be used as the verb, as the act, and it can also be used as the place. This is the place in which this boy child or this girl child was cut. They were cut. That's where the circumcision, quote unquote, or the mutilation, quote unquote, was done. And he says, and from this meaning linguistically, is the hadith that says, when the two khitans meet, the ghusl must be made. When the two khitans meet, then the ghusls must be made. He says this means when there's vaginal penetration. Vaginal penetration. As when a man inserts his sexual organ into a woman's sexual organ, then they have to make a ghusl. Meaning, once a man inserts his penis into a woman's vaginal opening, all right, then there is a ghusl. Even if a man doesn't reach climax or a woman doesn't reach climax, even if they don't reach orgasm, if they don't finish, if it doesn't feel good, if it's painful, you have to immediately make a ghusl. He says, and what's meant here is not for a person to take the tip of his penis and to place it on a woman's clitoris or a woman's labia, the tip of her vagina. He says that's not what's meant, because what's meant is actual insertion, in which the bottom reaches the top reaches the bottom, where they were both cut. Okay? And this is the meaning of the word khitan linguistically. Linguistically. And it goes to show us here, according to what the author has mentioned, is that it does not specify here what is or isn't cut. It doesn't necessarily specify in detail what is or what isn't cut. But what we can agree upon here, linguistically, is that there is something that is cut from both children, from boys and from females, according to the Arabs and their language. Other ethnicities, cultures, races, nations, that's a different story. Where do they get it from? We're talking about the Arabic language and understanding what it means in the hadith. Okay? The author, he then says, وقال النووي في شرح مسلم. النووي رحمه الله, he says in the explanation of Sahih Muslim, ثم إن الواجب في الرجل أن يقطع جميع الجلدة التي تغطي الحشفة حتى ينكشف جميع الحشفة. He says, after we've explained what the word khitan actually means, he says that which is obligatory pertaining to men, that which must be done when there is circumcision for a male, is all skin that covers that which is called al-hashafa, meaning the head or the tip of the penis. The excess skin has to be removed. وفي المرأة يجب قطع أدنى جزء من الجلدة التي في أعلى الفرج. He says, and as far as how it's done with a woman, then the smallest piece of flesh, the smallest piece of skin that hangs down from the top of her vagina, the top of her sexual organ. And that in English is the clitoral hood, as they say, the clitoral hood. So we notice here in the Arabic language that Nawawi rahimahullah so far, he didn't mention anything about taking the labia out, removing the entire clitoris. He didn't mention anything about sewing up the entire sexual organ, a woman's vaginal opening. Okay, he didn't mention anything like this. Of the vulva, he didn't mention anything about that. Rather, he says cutting a small piece from the top of it. So we see linguistically, and according here, is that that is what's understood by the word khitan, circumcision. So far linguistically we see is that what people do in different countries and different places is not necessarily what is meant by that term in the Arabic language. And we haven't even established, is khitan something from the Sunnah with regards to women? Is it for men or just women, etc.? So far we see that linguistically cutting and removing, mutilating and taking everything out is not what's meant by the term in the Arabic language. What people do in Uganda and Nigeria, we are not responsible for. We're only responsible for the Islamic religion and the legislature of Islam, which is based off of, initially, the culture of the Arabs. I said initially. Initially. And there are people who may become upset at this and may say, oh, that is the truth. Once I did a marriage, and I said that Arabic is the language of Islam. It was a black brother. He says, well, what do you mean by that, Akhi? That Arab is the language of Islam. What do you mean by that? He says, I'm not Arab. There are millions of Muslims who aren't Arabs. That's what he said to me, aggressively, after the talk. And I had to explain to him, I says, when you see me, what do you say? Do you say, peace be upon you, brother? Or do you say, assalamu alaikum? In your prayer, what do you say? All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Do you say that? Or do you say, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen? You recite Arabic. You speak Arabic to your brother. That's the language of Islam. It doesn't mean that only Muslims are Arabs. It doesn't mean that. But that is the formal language of Islam. So the original understanding of the text of Quran and Sunnah is the language and culture of the Arabs. There's no question about that. I said initially. It doesn't mean that everything the Arabs do is from the deen and it's correct. And we have to change every cultural thing that we do. It does not mean that. So don't mix oranges and apples. It then says, rahimahullah ta'ala, or that's the end of Nawawi's quote. The author, he then quotes Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, and Fathul Bari. He says, Al-khitanu bikasr al-mu'jamati wa takhfif al-muthanna masdaru khatana ay qata'a wal-khatnu بفتح أو بفتح ثم سكون قطع بعض أو قطع بعض مخصوص من عضو مخصوص. He says here, the word khitan with a kasra of al-sound, khitan and not khatan or khutan, with a kha is the verbal noun of khatana, which means qat'a. It linguistically means to cut. It means to cut something. And what's meant here is cutting a specific place in a specific way from a specific part of the body. Okay? ووقع في رواية يونس عند مسلم على اختتان والختان اسم لفعل الختن ولموضع الختان أيضا كما في حديث عائشة إذا التقى الختانان والأول المراد هنا قال الماوردي. And then he goes on to explain this linguistically, okay, and what's exactly meant by circumcision pertaining to the male. Right now, we're not talking about male circumcision. That's not the topic of our discussion. Male circumcision. We're talking about female circumcision right now. طيب. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, قال الماوردي ختانها قطع جلدة تكون في أعلى فرجها فوق مدخل الذكر كالنواة أو كعرف الديك والواجب قطع الجلدة المستعلية منه دون استئصاله. He says that Al-Mawardi says, from the ulama of the past, a jurist, He says what's meant by a woman's circumcision is to cut a small piece of flesh, a small piece of skin, which is at the top of her private part, meaning the clitoris, a part of the clitoris, and not the entire clitoris. He says that's what's meant by this word and this term here. He says that which is above the opening, the vaginal opening for a man's penis when there's insertion, when there's sexual intercourse. He says here, like kennawa, he says like a seed, a date seed, the seed of a date, right? And this goes to show you how the Muslims of the past and the ulama of the past, they were not absolutely ostracized and totally removed from sexual education and the description of a private part for the purpose of the deen. Not like people today, in which you can't say this, you can't mention that, it's haram, don't talk about this, don't mention this, why are you talking about this in the masjid? That's not how they were in the past, 100%. So if you think about the seed of a date and what is symbolic to and what it may look like, just think about that for a second. He says, or if it's not like that, he says, كَعُرْفَ الدِّيك. He says, or like that of a crow or a rooster. You see a crow and a rooster, the skin that's on the top of the crow's head or on the bottom, you see that red fleshy thing that moves around, okay? Or even, one may say, the actual beak of the bird, similar to a clitoris. He says here, and what's meant by female circumcision, cutting her, he says, al-jild al-musta'liya. He says it's the skin or this thing that hangs from above, minhu dun istisali, and not cutting it all out, not removing it and taking it all out, i.e. not mutilating her. There's a difference here between cutting something and removing it, and the purpose and the usage is totally void and done. There's a huge difference now. Moving forward, he says, ثم قال الحافظ رحمه الله قال النووي ويسمى ختان الرجل إعذارا, etc. Other details of the Arabic language, which we don't have to necessarily mention right now. Okay, so that's what the word khitan means linguistically. So we see linguistically it does not necessitate, or not even necessitate, but we clearly see that it doesn't even mean mutilation. And if there was a non-Muslim who was fair and who was just and impartial, they say, well, I'm not a Muslim, I don't agree with Islam 100%, but we can't sit here and say that this is genital mutilation. Has she been cut? Yes. Is it mutilation? That's a different story. So the Muslims themselves, the Arabs themselves, the language doesn't support nor necessitate the concept of mutilating a woman's private area and sewing it up in which she can't have a child, she can't have sexual intercourse, or in which she has to have a surgical procedure done when she's married. As we've heard from brothers who got married in Yemen. A brother got married to a Somali sister in Yemen, and before he consummated the marriage, she had to go to the hospital to become unstitched. They sewed her vaginal opening tight, and they left a small, tiny hole for urine and for menstrual flow. That's not what's meant here. So a non-Muslim who's impartial is going to say, this is a cultural practice. This is from the ignorance of some Muslims or the jealousy of certain Muslims who are fighting and raiding each other, and they feared for their wives and their daughters to be taken as concubines and be raped and molested, and not necessarily the Islamic legislature. Moving forward, the author, he says here, قوله عليه الصلاة والسلام الفطرة قال النووي رحمه الله تعالى وأما الفطرة فقد اختلف في المراد بها هنا فقال أبو سليمان الخطابي ذهب أكثر العلماء إلى أنها السنة وكذا ذكره جماعة غير الخطابي قالوا إلى آخر كلامه رحمه الله. He mentions that the scholars of Islam, they differ on what's meant by the word fitra. What is meant by the fitra? Or we say in English, fitra. What's a fitra? What is fitra? What does that mean? He says that's a very long discussion, and the scholars of Islam, they differ on that. That's not our topic of discussion right now. He says here in the second footnote, هذا الحديث أول حديث ذكرناه في باب الختان وليس صريحا كما هو واضح في الاستدلال به على ختان النساء خاصة إلا من ناحية العموم الوارد فيه إذا انضم إليه حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما النساء شقائق الرجال. He says here, this hadith is the very first hadith that is used by those ulama who hold the view that females should be circumcised. Those who hold the view that females should be circumcised, he says this is the first proof that they use, first hadith that they use. Not proof, because there are proofs from the Quran that they may use, but proofs from the Sunnah. And he says, as you can clearly see, this hadith is not frank. It is not stark. It is not directly to the point that a woman has to get circumcised or that a woman should get circumcised. It is not directly to the point that you must do it and you have to do it, let alone mutilation and sewing up and this and that. He says, unless a person takes the generality from the hadith that says al-fitratu khams, fitra, and he doesn't specify for men and for women. He says fitra, the natural way, the innate way, the sunnah, the way that Allah created the human being and how Allah wants the human being to be. He doesn't specify sex and gender. However, if you look at the hadith, this is not his speech, I'm saying now, the hadith clearly shows you that there are certain things in this hadith that are only for men, such as trimming the mustache. Do women have mustaches or mustaches? If a woman has hair on her face, what does she do? How does she remove it? And is it normal and regular for a woman to have a full-blown, bona fide mustache on her face? And is she to trim it or to get rid of it? So that goes to show you that there's certain things in this hadith that aren't necessarily directed to women. That's clear from the hadith. The author, Sheikh Adawi, he says here, if we look at another hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا النِّسَاءُ شَقَائِقُ الرِّجَالِ, he says women are the shaqa'iq. They're the twins of men. Meaning, the rules that pertain to men are the rules that pertain to women. So if a man is to get circumcised, then a woman is also to get circumcised. And a man's circumcision is also going to be a woman's circumcision. One may say that. However, we know those ulama who say that a woman does not have to get circumcised, and some may say that she shouldn't get circumcised. They say a man is circumcised because of cleanliness and hygiene. Is that the case with a woman's circumcision? Are they cutting a piece of her clitoris or a piece of her labia because of hygiene or for other reasons? And if there are other reasons, are those reasons Islamic reasons or cultural reasons? So the argument from the get-go to say that a woman must be circumcised, let alone everything is removed and sewed up and stitched up, from the get-go linguistically is weak. And as far as the sunnah, based off of this hadith, is also weak. The author, Hafidhullah, he says, وَثَمَّ أَحَدِيثُ أُخَرُ فِي الْبَابِ تَتَعَلَّقُ بِخِتَانِ النِّسَاءِ على وجه الخصوص لا يخلو حديث منها من مقال منها. He says, and there are many other hadiths that have been mentioned here that pertain to a woman being circumcised. Many hadiths. He says, however, these hadiths, all of them, لا يخلو, he says they're not free from fault or flaw, meaning that they're weak. These hadiths that support the obligation of female circumcision and or the recommendation of female circumcision, he says they're all weak. So we have two types of hadiths here. The first type is a hadith which is authentic, the hadith of Abu Hurairah in the Sahihain, but is not sarih, is not directly to the point. And then we have other hadiths which are directly to the point, which are weak. Pay attention, pay close attention now. He says, منها, from those hadiths, ما أخرجه أبو داود من حديث عطية رضي الله عنها أن امرأة كانت تختن بالمدينة فقال لها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تنهكي فإن ذلك أحظى للمرأة وأحب إلى البعل. لكن في إسناده محمد بن حسان قال فيه أبو داود مجهول وقال أبو داود أيضا وقد روي مرسلا وضعف هذا الحديث. From those hadiths is the narration of Atiyah and Sunan Abi Dawud, in which in the time of the Messenger of Allah there was a woman who was a circumciser or a circumciserist. Okay, circumciserist, whatever you want to word. She was a female circumciser. She used to cut women. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, La tunhiki. He says, don't take everything away. Don't remove everything. Do something, but don't take it all out. Because that is better for a woman and more pleasurable for the husband. Okay? For lack of better translation of the hadith. for lack of better translation of the hadith. All right. Al-Muhim, the author, he explains that this isnad is weak. There's someone who's unknown in the chain, and Abu Dawud says it's also in mursal report and is da'if, is weak. So that first hadith is of no use. وله شاهد آخر ضعيف إن الخطيب البغدادي من طريق محمد بن سلام الجمحي قال حدثنا زائدة بن أبي الرقاد عن ثابت عن أنس بن مالك أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لمعطية إذا خفضت فأشمي ولا تنهكي فإنه أنظر للوجه وأحظى عند الزوج. He mentions another narration which is a shahid, a supporting narration which is weak. It is not authentic as well. The narrator, Zaid ibn Abi Raqad, is munkar al-hadith, is weak, is of no use whatsoever. طيب. Then he also mentions other narrations, many other narrations. The author, he says about these narrations, about these hadiths, وَكُلُّهَا ضَعِيفَةٌ مَعْلُولَةٌ مَخْدُوشَةٌ لَا يصح الاحتجاج بها. He says all of these reports about a woman getting circumcised, the legality of a woman being circumcised, he says they are all extremely weak. None of them are authentic. وَالنَّقَلَ عَنِ ابن الْمُنذِرِ أنه قال ليس في الختام خبر يرجع إليه ولا سنة تتبع. The explainer or the commentator of Sunnah Abi Dawud, Al-Azim Abadi, the Sahib of Awn al-Ma'bud, he narrates from Ibn al-Mundhir, who said there is no authentic hadith pertaining to women that is found. There's no authentic narration that supports the circumcision of women, the khitan of women. Tayyib. That's a very interesting point and food for thought. When we talk about the cultural mess and the mixing pot of the Islamic rulings, most of them, or not most, but many, a good portion of them are based off of weak hadiths, which goes to show us the importance of the sciences of hadith. The importance of the sciences of hadith is that Islam is defamed, and oftentimes a bad reputation is given because of something that the Prophet didn't even say. He then says, وانظر سلسلة الأحاديث الصحيحة للشيخ ناصر الدين الألباني رحمه الله. طيب. هذا وفي أبواب الختان أحاديث كلها لا تخلو من مقال منها حديث أسامة الهذلي رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الختان سنة للرجال مكرمة للنساء إلا أنه حديث ضعيف إذ إنه كذا قال إذ إنه في مسند أحمد من طريق حجاج من عطاء وهو ضعيف مدلس. He goes on and he reiterates the point is that there are hadiths that are all weak. One hadith says khitan, circumcision for men, is a sunnah and it's an honor for women. And he says that hadith is baseless as well. It is not authentic. It is not authentic. Tayyib. Then he goes on to say that's the bottom line, is that there is no authentic hadith to support a woman being circumcised, let alone being mutilated. Moving forward. He says, أما أقوال أهل العلم في المسألة فهذه بعضها. He says, as far as what some of the scholars say, that's the first step, looking at the dalil. After the dalil and investigating it and analyzing it, you look at what the ulama of Islam say, how they understood it. Okay, that's the proper understanding. And not the scholars, then the hadiths. But the hadiths, the evidence, then what the ulama say. He says, قال النووي رحمه الله الختان واجب عند الشافعي وكثير من العلماء والسنة عند مالك وأكثر العلماء وهو عند الشافعي واجب على الرجال والنساء جميعا. An-Nawawi, he says, listen carefully, he says circumcision is obligatory according to Imam al-Shafi'i and many ulama. And he says according to Imam Malik and most of the ulama, he says then they hold the view that it is just the sunnah and it isn't obligatory. It's just the sunnah and it isn't obligatory. That's the view of most of the ulama of Islam. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, that Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, holds the view that it is mandatory. And he says others, he says, kathir min ulama. Has that been established? Or is it something that is mentioned? Are there other ulama who hold the view that it's mandatory upon women as well, and men as well, or just Shafi'i? And no, he says, Shafi'i wa kathir, he says, and many other scholars, they hold the view that the khitan is obligatory. He says here, and Malik and most others hold the view that it is only recommended. Okay? And he says that it's mandatory upon men and women. Men and women. Shafi'i. That's his view. That's the view of Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala. So, before we move forward, this shows us that how can a person say that this is Islam to mutilate a woman's genitalia, her external genitalia, and that's Islam? And most of the scholars and interpreters of Islam say that that's not the case. If that is the case of Shafi'i, and if that is the strongest view, but you can't say that that's unanimously agreed upon by all Muslims. So those who say that Islam supports FGM and Islam oppresses and suppresses women, then something's wrong. Something is seriously wrong. You have not read and studied what Islam is. You may have read a Wikipedia article, and even on a Wikipedia article, if you go back to it, it clearly states that Shafi'i jurisprudence, or the law, the school of law of the Shafi'i way, is the only way that holds the view that female circumcision is obligatory. So you as a kafir, as a Christian, as a atheist, as whoever you are trying to go against Islam, or even a misguided Muslim, whatever it is, you're not even thorough in your reading and your studies. And that's the case with most of the doubts about Islam. Most of the doubts about Islam today they come from people that have never read a book written by a Muslim. They've never read the Quran in its original language. They don't know nothing about hadith and tafsir and fiqh and things like this. Most of the videos that you find on YouTube that are talking about Islam, and there are many videos and they're different levels. Not all of those videos are just is laughing and joking. Some of those videos, some of those people are discussing serious issues and seriously attacking Islam and trying earnestly to knock down the castle of Islam. There's no doubt about that. And there are other people that are jokers, that are playing around, mockery. They're laugh and joke. They're not serious. They're not trying to be scholastic. But among the scholastic people who talk about Islam and the Muslims and Sahih Bukhari and Ibn Sa'd and Hisham, his seerah of Ibn Hisham, and this one, and the Prophet did this, the Prophet committed genocide, the Prophet, he did this, and the Prophet had slaves, and the Prophet, I guarantee you, 9 out of 10 of them, if not more, 9 out of 10, those on YouTube and on the internet and social media, I guarantee you, if you watch their videos, no matter how strong you think their argument may be or seem, none of them are speaking or reading Arabic. 9 out of 10 of them are not speaking and reading Arabic. So how can a person truly study Christianity or Catholicism or this or that and he knows no Latin? How can I be an expert scholar of the way of Judah, the law of Judah, and I don't speak Hebrew or Yiddish? Something isn't right now. Something doesn't make sense. And when you do speak Arabic, there are other tools that you need. But you don't even speak the language of the religion. How can you read the proper sources unless you're not actually reading those sources and you're taking from a third, fourth-hand source? As the early Orientalists criticized the Quran, and they criticized a Quran that was in French, that was translated from Latin, that was translated from Arabic. He criticized the grammatic style of the Quran that was translated into French from Latin, from Arabic. How many hands are in the pot now? How was the first translation from Arabic to Latin? What was the translation from Latin to French? And what are the differences and the inconsistencies and the lack of parallels between those three languages? And wala hada faqis. Everything else, most other issues are like this as well. So, that's the first quote. He then says, وقال ابن قدامة في المغني. Ibn Qudama rahimahullah, he says in his book Al-Mughni, he's a Hanbali scholar, فأما الختان فواجب على الرجال ومكرمة في حق النساء. He says, as far as circumcision, then it is obligatory upon men, and it is a means of honor. It's a recommended, preferable choice for women. He says this is the view, هذا قول كثير من أهل العلم. He says it's the view of many, many people of knowledge. قال أحمد الرجل أشد. He says, Ahmed says that a man's case is much more serious and detrimental and dangerous than a woman's case. Meaning, a man needs to be circumcised 10 times more and before a woman needs to be circumcised. Ibn Qudama, he says, وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ الرَّجُلَ إِذَا لَمْ يَخْتَتِنْ فتلك الجلدة مدلاة على الكمرة لا ينفي ما ثم والمرأة أهون ثم قال أيضا إلى آخره. And he goes on to explain why a man needs to be circumcised more than a woman needs to be circumcised. He says, ويشرع الختان في حق النساء أيضا. He says, and a woman can be circumcised as well. And it's legal, and it's from the deen for her to be circumcised as well. That's his view. And then Ibn Qudamah, he goes on to quote the hadith that says, إِذَا الْتَقَى الْخِتَانَانِ وَجَبَ الْغُسْلُ وَفِيهِ بَيَانٌ أَنَّ النِّسَاءَ كُنَّ يَخْتَتِنْ. He says, the hadith that states when the two khitans meet up, the ghusl must be made. What we previously explained, that's an authentic hadith. And he says, this hadith shows that women also were circumcised. طيب? We've mentioned the hadith which are authentic are not direct to the point. The hadiths which are direct to the point are not authentic, right? And the hadith doesn't necessarily state that it's a sunnah for a woman to get circumcised. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ is speaking to people, many of them who came from Jahiliyyah and came from Shirk. And it was a well-known practice among Arabs, men and women, to get circumcised. It doesn't mean that it is now obligatory in Islam to get circumcised. Nor does it necessarily mean that it's recommended. One may say it proves that it is permissible, that the Prophet, he didn't abolish the practice. He didn't abolish the practice. One may say this, and he may have a strong argument that it's not abolished. They did it in Jahiliyyah, this was the culture in their language, and the Prophet ﷺ did not abolish those cultural practices. And the rule is, the things that were done in Jahiliyyah before Islam, if the Quran and the Sunnah does not abolish them, then they remain an Islamic practice. One may say that. And of course there are details in that. Moving forward. Then he mentions ثم أورد جملة أحاديث ضعيفة بينا ضعفها رحمه الله. And he went on to mention other texts that we previously explained which are weak. Shaykh al-Adawi, he says. طيب. That's the end of the quote of Ibn Qudamah. وسئل ابن تيمية رحمه الله عن المرأة هل تختتن أو تختتن أم لا فأجاب الحمد لله نعم تختتن وختانها أن تقطع على الجلدة التي كعرف الديك. He says that a woman should get circumcised. Ibn Taymiyyah was asked, should a woman be circumcised? He says, naam, she should be circumcised. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he then went on to mention what should be circumcised from a woman, and it's what we have previously explained, the top piece, that's it. And he goes on to quote the dalil for that. And obviously that dalil is the hadith that we previously mentioned, which is weak, the hadith of Atiyah, which the Prophet ﷺ told her, don't cut everything, don't remove everything, but take something away. It's not authentic. And as pausing the translation, what Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Qudamah or this one or that one says is not necessarily what we have to do if it's not authentically proven. That fiqh view, that fiqh issue is not sacred. Even if it was passed down, madhab by madhab. Ibn Taymiyyah said this, it is not sacred if it's not authentic to us. We don't have to stick to it and abide by it. Abadan. He says, explaining the hadith, he mentions the hadith, we won't mention it again for lack of time. And listen to this quote, Ibn Taymiyyah, he says, يعني لا تبالغي في القطع. And he says that hadith means is do not go extreme in cutting. Do not go extreme in cutting. So look here. The proof that they use for female circumcision is already problematic and there are issues pertaining to it. But even that proof itself, he says it means don't go extreme in cutting. So it does not support and mandate mutilation and sewing up and the removal of the entire clitoris and etc. It doesn't mean that. Even if you're going to use that hadith, it doesn't support that. وذلك أن المقصود بختان الرجل تطهيره من النجاسة المتحقنة في القلفة. He says, and this is because the reason behind a man getting circumcised is purity, is hygiene, is the urine that will become entrapped in the skin around the tip of his penis. When he urinates and he wipes himself, or if he doesn't wipe himself, etc. And obviously, only Allah knows the problems that are going to come of infection, of rash. Many, many things are going to happen if there's impurity on the tip of his private part. Under that skin, it's going to be unclean. والمقصود من ختان المرأة تعديل شهوتها فإذا كانت قلفاء كانت مغتلمة شديدة الشهوة. He says here, And the reason, he says, the proof that that's what the hadith means is because the reason behind a woman getting circumcised is ta'dilu shahwatiha. He says is to minimize or to regulate her lust, to regulate her sexual drive, her sex drive, as for her not to have an insatiable taste for sex. That's the reason why a woman is circumcised, okay? And if a woman has no circumcision, then she will have a very, very strong, powerful, unquenchable sex drive. This is the words of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. وَلِهَذَا يُقَالُ فِي الْمُشَاتَمَةِ يَبْنَ الْقَلْفَةِ. He says, and this is why it is said when a person wishes to curse someone, when two men are cursing each other and arguing, a person says, يَبْنَ الْقَلْفَةِ. It says, "Oh, you son of an uncircumcised woman." They say, "Oh, you son of an uncircumcised woman," meaning that he's calling his mother something negative and something derogatory. Like we say in America, "You son of a bitch." They call him a son of a ... That's when you curse someone, you call him a son of something, a female dog. So the word bitch, a female dog, is going to be something that's derogatory. It's not positive in our culture. You get angry, someone cuts you off in traffic, you beep your horn, "You son of a ... a female dog." To call someone a bitch, it's not a good thing. Okay, so this goes to show you that the Arabs, they look down upon a woman having a strong sex drive and not having circumcision. فإن القلفاء تتطلع إلى الرجال أكثر ولهذا يوجد من الفواحش في نساء التتر ونساء الإفرنج ما لا يوجد في نساء المسلمين. He says, and when a woman is not circumcised, then she'll want and she'll lust for men more. She has a greater lust and passion for sex. And this is why you find all types of infidelity and scandalous, promiscuous things being done among the women of non-Arabs, such as the Tatars, whether they're the Mongols or another race, Ifranj, the Franks, what they call the French and the Germans, and the different people that came from Western Europe to the Middle East, the people who came on the Crusades, etc. They call them Franks, right? Al-Ifranj. He says you find all types of scandal and promiscuous things being done, things that would never ever be thought of among Muslim women. And what he means by Muslim women, there's no doubt that what Ibn Taymiyyah is talking about right now is talking about Arab Muslim women. Because Ibn Taymiyyah came from a place, his region, his time, his locale, and predominantly, not all, there were other Muslims of other ethnicities, but predominantly he's talking about Arabs. And he's talking about Arab culture. That's a historical fact that you can't get around. Even to this day, when people think about Islam and Muslim, they think about Arabs or Arabic, Middle East. The first place that you think about when you hear Islam is not West Africa or Indonesia or Malaysia or Turkey. The first place is Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Egypt. They think about these regions. Palestine is a reality. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala even says, وَإِذَا حَصَلَتِ الْمُبَالَغَةُ فِي الْخِتَانِ ضَعَفَتِ الشَّهْوَةُ فَلَا يَكْمُلُ مَقْصُودُ الرَّجُلِ. Listen to what Ibn Taymiyyah says. He says, and when a woman is cut excessively, too much, he says, then her lust is weak. Her sex drive becomes very weak. Listen to what Ibn Taymiyyah says. He says, and the maqsood al-rajul, he says, the intention of the man, the objective of the man cannot be fulfilled. A man's purpose cannot be fulfilled. فَإِذَا قُطِعَ مِنْ غَيْرِ مُبَالَغَةٍ حَصَلَ الْمَقْصُودُ بِاعْتِدَالٍ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. And when a woman is circumcised moderately, then everything is okay. The man's lust can be fulfilled and satisfied, and a woman isn't a promiscuous whore in which she just needs sex, men, 24/7. That's the end of Ibn Taymiyyah's words. He says, and Allah knows best. Now, we're not here to argue with Ibn Taymiyyah. Who are we to argue with Ibn Taymiyyah? We're not here to debate on what he's saying. That's his view, and he's entitled to that view. And that is his reasoning. We're not here to debate with Ibn Taymiyyah, evident. Well, who are we to debate with any scholar? Okay? But the point, as I've said, is crystal clear. Is that I'm not making nothing up. Nothing is coming out of my pocket. This is a reality. He says, notice here that Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he only mentioned two aspects of circumcision. A woman being promiscuous and a man being sexually satisfied. That's it. Ibn Taymiyyah, he didn't even mention a woman who's married having her sexual desires fulfilled and satisfied. He says that didn't even come up in the table of discussion. There wasn't even a card on the table. That didn't even come up at all. As I've previously said, historically, in the past, Muslim or non-Muslim, Arab, Turkish, African, whatever they are, a woman's sexuality, her pleasure, what she needs, what she wants, it was unknown to many. And also to those whom it was known, as we can see, they know the concept of a clitoris. It was something that was of no importance. It doesn't matter whether a woman feels good or not, whether she enjoys herself. Who cares? If the man, he gets his sexual pleasure, he has his orgasm, he releases his fluid, and she has a child, that's it. It's a reality. Now, is that Islam? Is that Islam? Is that what the Prophet ﷺ said? Is that the concept of Islam? That none of you believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself? For a man to find sex to be pleasurable and it feels good, but a woman, she doesn't have to feel any pleasure. There's no such thing as sexual frustration. A man can be sexually frustrated because he hasn't had sex for a very, very long time. But a woman is normal. Is that Islam? Is that wanting for your wife what you want for yourself? Can someone sit down and say that is the attitude of Islam? That it only matters about pleasing a man? I'll leave the answer to you. And it also goes to show you what I've just said about the concept of feminism and chauvinism, and how many women went to the extreme because of things like this. A woman's sexual desires aren't important. All right, you know what? We don't need men. Let's be lesbians. There's no need for a man. There are sex toys, vibrators, dildos, things like this. I don't need a man to please me anymore. I can be connected to a woman as much as I can be connected to a man. Rather, I'm connected to a woman more. That's what many lesbian women, they say. That a woman, she understands me more emotionally than a man does. A man is crude and rugged. He's a pig. He's going to cheat on me. He only wants me because of my body and what I look like. But a woman is connected to me. I can connect with a woman emotionally. A woman's body is softer and sweeter and this and that. She knows the pleasure spots, not like a man does. This is what lesbian women say. And this is what women who aren't lesbians, they say about different aspects of feminism. Because it was one extreme and it led to the other extreme. So one consider and say, look how he didn't even consider a woman. The only reason behind a woman getting her body cut is for a man's pleasure. Now let's apply this to the modern day times. Why do men mutilate women sexually? Why is there FGM? Many of them, if not most of them, if not all of them, but for sure most of them, they will say, if you read and study, that we are afraid that our women will be promiscuous, our women will be scandalous. We are afraid that our women will be captured because we live and we fight each other. There's civil war. There's unrest here in this country. And when a woman is captured from the other side, the first thing that is done is she's violated. Whether she's raped, like actual rape, okay? Or whether she's taken as a concubine. And whether it is according to that time and place and religion and the conditions of war, a woman is actually taken as a concubine, a legal concubine. We're not here to discuss this, the concept of concubinage in Islam. We all know what happened at that college when that poor ignorant sister and those poor ignorant sisters and those poor ignorant brothers that supported them said what they said against the Quran and the Sunnah, that there's no such thing as a sex slave in Islam, and raping women, the Prophet never raped women, so on and so forth. We're not going to get into that right now. It's a huge problem. Can you say that? Is having a concubine and raping her, all right, and the concept of legality. This is someone's property. Someone owns a thing. According to his law and legislation, he is allowed to do with that thing as long as it doesn't go against the laws, whatever that thing may be. You know, however how harsh it may sound, but that's the bottom line. If a person is a Christian or a Jew or an atheist, or they live in a place and it's lawful to have a concubine, it's lawful according to his, we're not talking about Islam, legislation, and he can have relations with her, then it isn't considered to be rape. And rape is something which is illegal, something which is immoral, something which is against a woman's will and wishes, and a man has no right to sexually force himself upon this woman. Can you say that with concubinage? Historically, can you say that? Let alone in Islam. Can you say that? Is that what Allah means? Oh, ma malakat aymanukum, that which your right hands possess. Wa ma malakat yaminuk, which your right hand possesses. Oh, Muhammad. Can you say that the Prophet raped women and raped slaves? Can you agree with kuffar? Can you agree with their terminology, once more, about mutilation and circumcision? Once you agree with their terminology, khalas, you've already lost the battle. Any cutting of a woman's external private part is mutilation, khalas. So therefore, there's no circumcision in Islam. Any relations with a woman that's been taken prisoner or captive, she's from the captives of war, any sexual relations is automatic rape, even if it's with her consent. And he takes care of her and provides for her. Her husband, her father, her sons have been killed in battle. And there's no one to look after her to take care of her. Period. Even if it's legislated, it's rape. Can you say that? And was the Prophet a rapist? Can you say that? That's extremely, extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. So the point is that people who do FGM, most of them, they'll tell you the reason behind FGM is that they're afraid, they're fearful, and they're jealous for their women. They don't want their women to be raped and molested. They don't want their women, even if rape, if it's not concubinage, actually being raped, okay? In which the concept of war in Islam and warfare in Islam is no different than salah in Islam. Prayer in Islam is done at a specific time, in a specific place, in a specific direction, wearing specific clothes, saying specific things, and the same applies to warfare. There is no, the city has been sacked, the wall has been breached, the war is over, and I allow my troops to just run wild through the city and loot and plunder and burn and rape any woman that they catch. And you can rape and sleep with. No, that's not Islam. That is not Islam. Abadan. There are rules and there are regulations, not like the Imperial Army of Japan when they went into Nanking and raped hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of women, recklessly, and mutilated and beheaded and killed. Whether the numbers are exaggerated or not, it did happen. And there are other armies and other wars in which that happened as well. That's not Islam. A man cannot share a woman who is his concubine. There's rulings, there are rules. It's not just no reckless sex party, orgy, and we should just rape 50 women. That's not Islam. Okay, so many people, this is the reason why they do these things. Okay, so the concept of a woman's pleasure, a woman's pain, a woman's suffering, oftentimes is not even thought about. And it's only about a man's honor, and a man's pleasure. If her vagina is not sewed tight, she'll sleep around and shame me. She'll dishonor me. And the list goes on. And obviously there are people who are on the other side of extremism who have no honor and have no care and concern for their daughters. She can sleep around. It doesn't matter to me. It's her life. Let her have fun. Let her enjoy herself. It's okay. And he has no shame that his daughter is a whore. He has no shame whatsoever. He doesn't have no shame or bashfulness that his daughter is being passed around and slept with by 50 or 100 men. It's normal. It's nothing. She's free to do what she wants. Something is wrong as well. That's an extreme as well. And that which is correct in Islam is that there is a balance. There is a balance. طيب. Sheikh Adawi, he then says, وقال الحافظ بن حجر وأفاد الشيخ وأبو عبد الله بن الحاج في المدخل أنه اختلف في النساء هل يخفضن عموما أو يفرق بين نساء المشرق فيخفضن ونساء المغرب فلا يخفضن لعدم الفضل المشروع قطعها منهن بخلاف نساء المشرق. وقال فمن قال إن من ولد مختونا يستحب إمرار الموس على الموضع امتثالا للأمر قال في حق المرأة كذلك ومن لا فلا. وقال حافظ أيضا في وجه الشافعية لا يجب في حق النساء وهو الذي أورده صاحب المغني عن أحمد وذهب أكثر العلماء وبعض الشافعية لأنه ليس بواجب. He then quotes Ibn Hajar, who mentions similar things with regards to some differences and discrepancies among the ulama of Islam about a woman being circumcised. Should a woman be circumcised or not? Is there a difference between women who come from this region, very strange and interesting speech here, from this region who have this extra or additional skin or flesh on their external private parts and women who come from another region who don't? Allah knows best. Perhaps the author is talking about the different types of a woman's private area, that which is external, that which is internal, or they say innie or outie or hybrid. Allah knows best if that's what he's talking about, but it seems that's what he is talking about. In other words, if a woman is quote-unquote in innie and she doesn't have that type of labia or clitoris, it's not the same as a woman who's quote-unquote in outie, who does have that protruding type of labia or clitoris. Or if it's a hybrid type, in which there is a bit of this and a bit of that. Allah knows best. Moving forward, he says here at the end of this, he says the ulama, they differ on this issue. Some Shafi'i ulama hold the view that a woman does not have to be circumcised as well. That's not agreement of all Shafi'is. Some of them hold the view that's recommended. And he mentions Ibn Qudama says that Imam Ahmed and most of the ulama hold the view that it isn't obligatory, and some of the Shafi'i ulama as well. طيب, that's the end of the quote of Hafidh bin Hajar rahimahullah. قلت فحاصل ما ورد في المسألة أنه لم يرد دليل صحيح صريح يوجب على النساء اختتان فمن فعلت فلها ذلك ومن لا فلا حرج والله تعالى أعلم. Shaykh al-Adawi, he concludes the chapter by saying, Al-Hasil, he says, at the end of the day, the bottom line is that there is no authentic hadith that clearly demands and necessitates female circumcision. Any woman who wishes to be circumcised, or a man who wishes to circumcise his daughter, a young girl, that's one thing. That's your choice and your discretion. And if not, فَلَا حَرَجْ, then there's no sin, and it is not obligatory. That's the bottom line according to the author. And as one sister, she was a disciple, she asked the question, why should a woman's sexual desires, why do they have to be regulated and managed? Why can't she just have sexual desires and fulfill them in a lawful way? A man has his sexual desires, nothing is cut from him that removes his sexual desires. He can marry 4 wives, he can have right-hand possessions. Why does a woman's sexual desires have to be regulated? As we said before, what the Prophet ﷺ said is not what scholars have said. What the people have extracted from the hadiths, from culture, from language, is not what is directly stated by the Prophet ﷺ. All right? So, Islam is one thing, Muslims is something else. Islam is one thing, culture is another thing. Then oftentimes it's hard for us to distinguish between the two, especially non-Muslims. This is the land of Muslims. How can you say that has nothing to do with Islam and 99% of the people in this country are all Muslim? Sometimes that's right, and sometimes that's totally false because of ignorance and bid'ah and cultural domination over the Sharia. So you may go to a place in which people all do something that is not from the Sunnah. And we can see among scholars, there's scholars who have different things that they don't know about with regards to hadiths, or they don't agree. Let alone ignorant Muslims that have been colonized and taken over, and they worship graves, and there's superstition, they wear amulets. Okay, there's a great opportunity for there to be widespread ignorance, and hadiths which are baseless, or hadiths that don't even exist, to be widespread and to dominate and dictate policy in this third world country. That's the reality. That's the reality, okay? So Islam is one thing in its purity, and the third world countries, the Muslims overseas, what they practice is a different story. Certain things, many things that they practice is clearly from Islam. And there are many things that's clearly not from Islam. And there are certain things which there's a mixture. There's a mixture. And as I said before, if we don't have nothing in the Quran and the Sunnah to say that a woman's sexual desires have to be stifled and regulated, then it's not obligatory to do that. And as long as a Muslim sister is pious, as long as she's righteous, as long as she lowers her gaze and she gets married, she fasts, she stays away from masturbation and other things like this, and lesbianism, what's the problem? What's the issue? One may say this. So this is a brief, very, very brief discussion, but I do believe, and it's haram for me to have fake piety and unnecessary humility and to reject Allah's favor upon me. I do believe that this is a brief yet thorough discussion of the issue. And there are many points and proofs and statements that have been mentioned in this lecture that you will not find in another lecture. And you will not find in another book. You won't find in one book. You won't find in Sheikh Adawi's book. You won't find in Ibn Taymiyyah's speech the background and the historical breakdown that we've given. Okay? And Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who deserves all praise. It's not arrogance or conceit. Okay? But it's, as the ulama of Islam has mentioned, that sometimes you have to be outward with Allah's blessings. And it's permissible for a person to take pride in Allah's blessings and to have confidence in a strong scholarly argument. So I don't believe, and Allah knows best, that a person can listen to this lecture, which is brief. I consider it to be brief. We could talk about this for 5 hours, literally, and not get to the end of it. But I don't think that anyone who's just and fair and impartial can listen to this lecture and then say that FGM is from Islam. And you shouldn't be a Muslim because they mutilate women. I don't think that you can do that after this lecture. Okay? Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best, and with Him is all success.